Hello, welcome back to the Astro Bloom podcast. My name is Vanya Banks, and I am your host, spiritual astrologer, and healing guide. So, this is going to be a two-part episode in the sense that there's going to be an energy update, which is really your guide to thriving during spring 2024's eclipse season, which we are officially in. And the second part is going to actually be a ritual in the form of an energy healing meditation for the lunar eclipse in Libra on March 25th. So, first of all, for those of you who might know or who might not know what eclipses are, I did just want to cover that briefly. So, eclipses are really potent, supercharged new and full moons. The first eclipse we have this spring is a full moon eclipse. The second one is a new moon eclipse. They usually happen about twice a year in the spring and in the fall. And what happens during an eclipse portal is there's sort of a 2-month window where we go through intense realignment on our soul path. Now, eclipses have been feared for a long time because they usually create unpredictable change. The energy is sort of that divine will energy of you might not know what's going to happen and you kind of need to learn to ride the wave. Now, I'm not saying this to scare you in any way. I think that eclipses are beautiful times of waking up to where we might not be in alignment with our true purpose, our dharma, our soul's intended path in life. And I just want you to know that an eclipse doesn't necessarily mean that everything in your life is just going to blow up all of a sudden and everything's going to shift and change. It could, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Eclipses can also bring deep inner awakenings to the point where they force us to make a change. So I think that either you'll be sort of on either one of these spectrums where you either have an inner awakening to something that needs to shift. And I'll get into the details of, what areas of your life that might happen in. And in this case, you're going to understand that what you are not changing as a result of this realization, you are choosing. And that choosing of something that is no longer in alignment, that your soul knows is no longer in alignment, is not going to serve you. It's not going to feel easy. It's going to make things more difficult. On the other hand, if things do occur for you during eclipse season where you feel that the rug is pulled out from underneath you, sudden change is happening in your external reality. So this could be, it could look like losing a job, ending a relationship, ending a friendship. Like this eclipse season is really a lot about relationships. You need to know that you shouldn't waste your time trying to control what you can't control. So with that, I did want to mention, I said that eclipses are these supercharged new and full moons. And the reason that is because they are times when the lunar nodes of fate or the lunar nodes of the moon or the north and south node, whatever you want to call them, which are these highly karmic points in the sky, line up with the new and the full moon. And so what happens at this time is we have this illumination of our collective soul evolution. And wherever, whatever sign this is happening in, this is going to be personally impacting you in a specific area of your chart, depending on, in this case, where the energies of Aries and Libra are. Now, we've already had an activation of this eclipse energy last fall in October of 2023. And this essentially did probably tell us a little bit about what these eclipses are unveiling or shifting in our lives as a result of where this energy lives in our own charts. So this is a deepening of that understanding. And when we think about the energy of Aries and Libra, these are two opposing signs, because eclipses always happen in opposing signs, that have to do with our individuality, our independence versus our relationships, and the balance we find in relationships and the compromise we find in relationships. And when we say this word balance, it's often thought that balance means that something is evenly sort of balanced, right? Distributed. We think about the scales being evenly weighed. And I just want to say that balance, a better word for balance is harmony. It's equilibrium, because balance doesn't necessarily mean that there is this even, equal distribution of something. It means that we are constantly able to find that natural ebb and flow between giving, between receiving, and between individuality and compromise. So, what's happening right now is our relationships are really being reevaluated. Relationship contracts are being renegotiated. And specifically around this March 25th eclipse, because it is a full moon eclipse that's happening in Libra, and we currently have the South Node in Libra, South Node being all of the things we are leaving behind, all of the shadow tendencies of Libra that we are leaving behind. Shadow tendencies of Libra being ways that we might have abandoned ourselves, our own desires, in order to keep the peace or to maintain certain relationships, ways that we might people please, ways that we might avoid conflict out of a fear of rejection, keeping peace at all costs, even if it means that that spark within us, that certain drive and passion kind of fizzles out in some way, because we're not actually taking care of our own needs. We're not going after the things that we value and that we desire. So because this is a full moon eclipse in Libra, something is happening that is illuminating where we are out of that harmony, where we are out of that balance, where we are struggling to regain the harmony. And at this time, it might become really obvious, because full moons are times of illumination, and specifically, full moon eclipse is a time of potent doors closing. It's a culmination. This is the lunar energy coming to a climax, and something is revealed at this time around our relationships, around our ability to find balance between the self and the other. Now, this whole beginning of 2024, we've also had a lot of activation around Chiron in Aries. Vika and I talked about this in our 2024 forecast, the recent episode that I just published. And Chiron in Aries is really asking us to look at our soul wounds, our inherent wounding around perhaps our fear of self-assertion, our fear of being rejected, just these deep, wounds that might be really triggered at this time. And we're all kind of fighting to regain that power and that spark and that drive and that desire back in our lives. And we might feel quite drained at this time of continuing in these people-pleasing tendencies and putting everyone else sort of in front of ourselves. We're really learning that we can't give from an empty cup. We have to fill up our own cup first. We have to put on our own oxygen mask on first, because without that, we can't serve anyone. We can't show up in relationships. We can't have that balance because we don't have anything left in us. And so this is something that's been unveiling for some time. And we might have tried to communicate our needs in certain relationships, and we might have really had to own our courage to be able to do that, to speak up, to face our wounds potentially of rejection or abandonment. And this has taken a lot of courage and a lot of strength, but for some reason, either the relationship is evolving and it's, going to shift now and things will be more balanced and more harmonious, or it's clear that there's sort of a conflict here around each person's needs, and there's an inability for the relationship to evolve to its next iteration, in which case it could mean that certain relationships must end because there has to be some kind of death that happens to create room for new life, for a new beginning, for new growth. And this sometimes means that people grow apart and then perhaps they grow back together. But it really depends on, again, the dynamic, where this is happening in your own chart as well. And when I say relationships, it doesn't mean necessarily just romantic relationships, because that's often what we think of initially. I'm talking about coworkers, employee-employer relationships, relationships with family. And at the end of the day, because this energy is really activating some of those core soul wounds, it does come back to how did our early childhood relationships and our upbringing and even, dynamics from past lives and things like that, how did this actually influence how we show up in relationships? The other thing I want to add about this eclipse in Libra on March 25th is that Libra's ruling planet Venus is actually lining up with Saturn. It's within a few degrees of Saturn in Pisces around this eclipse. And why this is important is because we've been working with Saturn in Pisces for some time now. Saturn in Pisces has been teaching us about our interconnectedness to everything else, because Pisces is this energy that wants to dissolve boundaries, but it's also teaching us about having energetic boundaries, of releasing the tendency to self-sacrifice, to martyr ourselves, and then become victims in the process because we're busy saving other people, or perhaps we're the ones that really want to be saved somehow. And it's interesting because Aries and Libra are ruled by the planets Mars and Venus, which are very much, two aspects of the masculine and feminine energies. And on the March 25th eclipse, we have Saturn meeting up with Venus. And then on the April 8th eclipse, which is the following eclipse I'll talk about, we have Mars meeting up with Saturn. So Saturn being this karmic planet about duty, about karma that might need to be rebalanced, responsibility, hard work, but also, again, boundaries, setting boundaries. This alignment of Saturn and Venus is teaching us about our own values. What do we really value? What does your soul value? And not just about our values, it also is teaching us about perhaps certain aspects of this feminine energy that we've been in that actually isn't serving us. So in our society, women generally are taught to kind of take care of everyone else before they take care of themselves. It's that archetype of the mother, right? Needing to take care of everyone else's needs and her needs coming last. So this is where that people pleasing comes in. It's everyone else goes first, and then my needs get taken care of if there's time, if there's energy, if there's space. And with Saturn meeting up with Venus, I think a lot of what's happening here is the fact that we're really coming to terms with what does it actually also mean to be in this feminine energy. And because we're meeting up with all this energy is highlighting that South Node in Libra, it's the things that we are leaving behind. It's the shadow tendencies of the feminine energy that we are leaving behind. It's that perhaps energy of, again, being a doormat in some way, people pleasing, avoiding conflict, right? Not being able to be brave enough to stand up for ourselves and for our needs. So that's where what I want to invite you to reflect on on March 25th, because we also have Neptune meeting up with the Sun in Pisces on March 17th. There is a lot of this, there's a big illumination around self-sacrifice, right? But also like spirituality and our connection to everything and everyone. It's about finding that balance between, I know, knowing that we are all connected, knowing that we're all human and divine, knowing that you want to perhaps be of service and you want to help other people. And, if you're someone like me who's a healer, you really want to be giving of the self, but also understanding that you can't save everyone. You have to first save yourself. You have to first fight for yourself, right? So then let's move on to the Aries eclipse. And I wanted to share with you before I do that a little bit about ways that we can go deeper together on this. So you've heard me mention a few times, take a look at where this energy is in your chart to find out what's happening for you, how this is affecting you, what it's inviting you into. And I just want to say I'm actually offering limited mini readings. There's only 7 available from now until April 7th. And the cool thing about these mini readings is they're much, much more accessible than my general sort of hourly rate. And it's very focused on this energy right now. So if you're someone who's thinking, this really sounds like me right now, I'm going through a lot of relationship stuff, there's just a lot of these themes around self-sacrifice, people pleasing, conflict avoidance, and really like I'm really being called to step into my own power, but I'm not really sure how or what's really being asked of me right now. This is a perfect opportunity for you to grab one of those mini readings. They're 30 minutes. And the cool thing about them also is that you're going to get included with the reading access to my virtual Aries Eclipse Circle, which is happening on April 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But don't worry if you can't attend in real time, because there's always a replay and you can watch it on your own time. So this Aries new moon eclipse is going to consist of a lot of this fire energy, a lot of this initiation energy. And in the virtual circle and ritual, what we do is we move through some movement to ignite this fire. I give, of course, an in-depth overview of what is happening with the eclipse. And even though I know I'm giving you an overview right now, there's always so much more that unfolds when we sit down in that energy and really are able to sense into it and feel into it. So yeah, I'm going to give an astrology overview. We're going to do like an oracle message. We'll do some movement, get that fire going. We'll do an energy activation to really allow you to lean into this energy of fire, of initiation, of Aries. And then we will do a ritual to close, and you will also get journal prompts to work through on your own time, and some directions on how to set some intentions moving forward. So with that being said, April 8th Aries eclipse is a really potent one. The sun, so it's a new moon eclipse, so it's all about new beginnings, initiation, and I would say this is the true start of the energetic year. The sun does move into Aries on March 19th, but because this full moon eclipse of energy of like of completion is happening on March 25th, I really don't think that energy of like spring and new beginnings is going to be present until this April 8th eclipse. April in and of itself is a packed month with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which you can also check out in the recent episode Vika and I recorded on 2024 forecast. But essentially, this new moon eclipse is Aries. It's a cardinal fire. And Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the ram. It is the energy that is super independent. It kind of bursts through things head first. It acts first, thinks later. So in this sense, it is the energy of action. It's the sign ruled by Mars, which is the planet of action, of drive, of passion, of initiation, of also conflict, of boundaries in some way. It's that solar plexus chakra. It's our willpower. And, this energy is also lining up with Chiron in Aries. Like I said, this is that soul wound energy we've been working with all, beginning of this year. And what's happening with this is initiating another layer into healing some of these self wounds that have been illuminated for us throughout the beginning of 2024. And it does this by giving us the courage to face them, to look toward the wound as a source of courage, as a source of power, wisdom, and know that by healing ourselves, we're actually then able to help heal others in some way with this wisdom. So the interesting thing about Aries, like I said, is this energy is ruled by Mars. And at this time, Mars meets up with Saturn in Pisces. And so Mars is really this more divine masculine energy. Not necessarily divine, it could also be the toxic expression of masculine energy. But what we are being invited into, because this is that North Node energy of what we are all learning about collectively, we're being invited into our divine masculinity. And that is the divine masculine within us. And when I say feminine and masculine, these don't have anything to do with genders. It's just the union of polar opposite energies, one being more receptive, the feminine, one being more outwardly expressed, more initiating, the masculine. And so the masculine is about that structure, feminine is about flow. And so how are we perhaps needing to actually invite more structure into our lives in some way, firmer boundaries into our lives in some way, whether that is with ourselves, with other people? It's likely both, so that we can actually have more of that flow of the Pisces energy, that flow to life, not fighting against the current of life, but surrendering to the flow, not swimming upstream, but allowing ourselves to float downstream. So this is all about leaning into that divine masculine and healing this relationship within by having the courage and having strong boundaries. So that means saying no to situations, to people, to places, to things that are draining our energy, that are keeping us stuck in people-pleasing patterns, that are keeping us in self-sacrificing patterns, that rob us of our power, that are not feeding our passion, not feeding our desires. And the shadow expression of masculine, energy, I shouldn't say the shadow expression of masculine energy. What I did want to say is it's also this energy is about moving into action, because the masculine is all about taking action. It's about having a plan and following through on that plan, right? Having the structure, having the commitment, having the willpower. But because we're really seeking to balance the feminine and masculine here, we also need to learn when we can control a situation and when we cannot control a situation, and when that situation requires us to surrender. right? To when do we need to be in our feminine? When do we need to be in our masculine? Because life is a dance between those two energies within ourselves and in relationships. You know, there's often one partner that's steps more into the masculine role and vice versa. And it really comes down to what is your inherent balance of that feminine and masculine energy. So, like I said, this is a big energy this spring. We will not be done these eclipses officially until early 2025 when the nodes finally shift into the next signs of Pisces and Virgo. But I would say that, this is a big one because we've got this Chiron influence that's really heavy around this time, really potent. And it's just a big start of the year with a lot of outer planets shifting. Again, you can learn more about that in the forecast episode. But if you are listening to this and you're wondering, how is this energy actually affecting me? What am I being called to do? And you want to dive deeper, please check out the show notes where you'll find the link to book your mini reading and also get access to the Aries Eclipse circle, which I would love to have you at. And again, if you can't make it in real time, you can always rewatch the replay at your own time. So for this next part, you might want to pause so that you can get comfortable, or if you're listening to this leading up to the March 25th eclipse, just come back to it around that time and make sure you have some incense, perhaps some rose essential oil to really connect to the energy of the heart chakra, and just get comfy, either sitting or laying down. You might also want to have a journal and pen nearby to note down anything that might have come up. So I'll see you soon in the meditation.